Imagine a city, the most beautiful city on earth. Libraries that reach the sky, gardens full of roses and fountains, markets selling silk, spices, gold, and ideas. Thousands of scholars walking through wide streets, debating mathematics, medicine, astronomy, and philosophy. This city has more books than you could read in a lifetime. It has hospitals with trained doctors. It has observatories where scientists map the stars. And then, in one terrible week, it is gone. The rivers run black with ink. The ink from hundreds of thousands of books, thrown into the water by soldiers. The sky turns dark with smoke. In the year 1258, the Mongol army destroyed Baghdad. One of the greatest civilizations in human history was nearly erased in days. But here is the miracle. It survived. The knowledge survived. Because for 500 years before that terrible day, the Islamic Golden Age had already given its greatest gifts to the world. And the world, whether it knows it or not, is still living inside those gifts right now. Welcome. If this is your first time here, welcome to a place where history becomes a story, and stories become something you feel in your chest. Today, we are going on a journey back more than 1,000 years. Back to a time when the world was very, very dark. Think about that for a second. After the fall of the Roman Empire in the 5th century, much of Europe entered a period historians call the Dark Ages. Cities shrank. Books were lost. Scientific knowledge almost disappeared. People lived short, difficult lives. Disease spread without understanding. Wars destroyed without reason. But while Europe was in darkness, somewhere else, a light was turning on. In the deserts of Arabia, along the rivers of Iraq, in the great cities of Persia and Spain, a civilization was rising. A civilization that would preserve the ancient knowledge of Greece and Rome, that would build on it, improve it, and create entirely new fields of science that the world had never seen before. This civilization was the Islamic world. And the period we call the Islamic Golden Age, from roughly 750 CE to 1258 CE, changed the course of human history forever. And honestly, most people today have no idea how much they owe to this period of history. So let us fix that today. It all begins with a decision. A single, extraordinary decision made by a caliph, that is the word for an Islamic ruler, named Harun al-Rashid. In the late 700 CE, Harun al-Rashid ruled the Abbasid Caliphate from the magnificent city of Baghdad. Baghdad was already one of the richest and most powerful cities on earth. But Harun al-Rashid wanted something more than power. He wanted knowledge. And so, he made a bold command. Collect every great book in the world and bring it to Baghdad. Books from Greece, from Persia, from India, from Egypt, from Rome. Scholars were sent across the entire known world with one mission: find knowledge. Bring it home. Translate it. Well, that is exactly what happened. His son, Caliph al-Ma'mun, took this dream even further. Around 830 CE, he established what became the most famous institution of learning in medieval history, Beit al-Hikmah. In English, we call it the House of Wisdom. Say that name slowly. The House of Wisdom. Doesn't it sound like something from a dream? The House of Wisdom was a library, a university, a research center, and a translation bureau, all in one place. Scholars from every background were invited. Muslims, Christians, Jews, Zoroastrians, it did not matter. If you had knowledge, you were welcome. Here is the surprising part. The Islamic Golden Age was not just Islamic. It was human. It was built by many different people, many different faiths, working together in pursuit of the same beautiful goal: understanding the universe. Now, let us meet the people. Because history is not really about dates and events. History is about human beings. Brilliant, determined, sometimes strange, sometimes lonely human beings who refuse to stop asking questions. Let us start with Muhammad ibn Musa al-Khwarizmi. Here is a question. What is 9 plus 6 by 3? Can you solve that? Of course you can, because you know algebra. But before al-Khwarizmi, Algebra did not exist. He invented it. He wrote a book in the 9th century called Al-Kitab al-Mukhtasar fi Hizb al-Jabr wal-Muqabala, which means the compendious book on calculation by completion and balancing. That phrase, al-Jabr, became our word, algebra, and his own name, al-Khwarizmi. When Latin scholars translated his work centuries later, his name became the word algorithm. Think about that for a second. Every time your phone runs an algorithm, when YouTube recommends a video, when Google finds a result, somewhere buried inside that technology is the echo of a man who lived in Baghdad over 1,000 years ago. Now let us talk about Ibn Sina, known in Europe as Avicenna. Ibn Sina was a physician, philosopher, and scientist born in 980 CE in what is now Uzbekistan. He wrote a book called The Canon of Medicine, and this book was used as the primary medical textbook in European universities for 600 years. 600 years. That is longer than the United States has existed as a country. Ibn Sina described how diseases spread through water and soil, centuries before the germ theory of disease was officially discovered in the West. He developed the idea of quarantine, isolating sick people to stop disease from spreading. We all learned that word during COVID-19. We owe that idea, in part, to a man born over 1,000 years ago. But that is not even the most shocking thing. He wrote his first medical book at age 16. By 21, he was treating kings. And then there is Ibn al-Haytham, the father of optics. Before Ibn al-Haytham, people believed that our eyes sent out rays of light, that we could see because our eyes were projecting light outward, like torches. That idea came from ancient Greece, and nobody questioned it for over 1,000 years. Ibn al-Haytham questioned it. Working in Egypt around 1000 CE, he conducted careful experiments using a darkened room, what we now call a camera obscura. He proved that light travels into the eye, not out of it. He laid the foundations for how we understand cameras, telescopes, eyeglasses, and eventually cinema itself. Yes, the movies you love? They exist, in part, because of a man who sat in a dark room in Cairo 1,000 years ago and asked, "Why can we see?" But here is something people rarely talk about. The Golden Age was not easy. It was not peaceful. These scholars, these giants of human thought, they suffered. Knowledge has always made people uncomfortable. Power has always feared the curious mind. Ibn Rushd, known in Europe as Averroes, was one of the greatest philosophers and scientists of the Islamic world. He believed that reason and faith could work together, that a person could be a good Muslim and also think deeply about science and philosophy. But not everyone agreed. Late in his life, the Caliph of Andalusia, southern Spain, ordered his books to be burned. He was exiled. His ideas were banned. He spent years in disgrace, alone, his work forbidden in the very civilization he had tried to serve. And honestly, that breaks your heart a little, doesn't it? Because his ideas did not die. They were carried, ironically, by Jewish scholars into Europe. And those ideas helped spark what we now call the Renaissance, the great European rebirth of art, science, and reason, built, in part, on the banned books of a Muslim scholar who died in exile. There were also battles, political, religious, and military, that constantly threatened the centers of learning. Rival caliphates fought for power. Religious conservatives sometimes clashed with progressive scholars. Funding disappeared. Rulers changed their minds. And underneath all of it, the scholars kept working. Because that is what great thinkers do. They keep asking questions, even when the world tells them to stop. February 13th, 1258. Remember that date. The Mongol army, led by Hulagu Khan, grandson of the legendary Genghis Khan, arrived at the walls of Baghdad, the city that had been the beating heart of the Islamic Golden Age for 500 years. The Caliph refused to surrender. He believed the city was too great, too holy, too important to fall. He was wrong. The Mongols broke through in days. What followed was one of the deadliest massacres in human history. Historians estimate that between 200,000 and 1 million people were killed in 1 week. The magnificent palaces and libraries burned. The canals that brought water to the city destroyed. The agricultural systems that fed millions shattered. And the books, the hundreds of thousands of books in the House of Wisdom, thrown into the Tigris River. Eyewitnesses from that time recorded something that still makes historians shudder. The river ran black for weeks. Black with the ink of lost knowledge. Some historians call this the moment the Islamic Golden Age truly ended. The center of the world's learning, gone. And yet, well, here's where the story turns again. Because knowledge, real knowledge, cannot be burned. It had already spread. To Cairo. To Cordoba in Spain. To Constantinople. To Central Asia. To the libraries of European monasteries. Into the hands and minds of scholars who had read these books, copied them, studied them, memorized them. The body of Baghdad was destroyed. But its mind had already escaped. Let me ask you something. This morning, when you woke up, did you drink coffee? Did you check the time? Did you wash your hands before eating? Did you look at the sky and see stars? Every single one of those things has a deep connection to the Islamic Golden Age. Coffee. The tradition of drinking coffee came from Ethiopia and Yemen and was developed and spread across the world through Islamic culture. The word coffee comes from the Arabic word kawa. Algebra, we covered that. But also, trigonometry, developed and refined by Islamic scholars. The decimal number system, passed from Indian mathematicians through Islamic scholars to Europe. Without this system, modern computers could not exist. The names of the stars. The next time you look at a clear night sky, look for Aldebaran, Deneb, Betelgeuse, Vega. All Arabic names. Named by Islamic astronomers who charted the heavens while Europe slept. When you look at the night sky and read the names of the stars, you are reading Arabic. You are reading the Golden Age. The concept of a hospital, a dedicated place where sick people go to be healed by trained doctors, was developed and formalized in the Islamic world. The first hospitals with specialized wards, trained medical staff, and pharmacies appeared in Baghdad, Cairo, and Damascus centuries before European medicine reached that level. In surgery, Al-Zahrawi, known as Al-Bucasis in Europe, wrote a 30-volume medical encyclopedia that included hundreds of surgical instruments he designed himself. Instruments that European surgeons were still using 500 years after his death. In chemistry, the word chemistry itself comes from Arabic. The words alkali, alcohol, alembic, elixir, all Arabic. All born from the laboratories of Islamic scientists. And philosophy. The works of Aristotle, the great Greek philosopher, were nearly lost to Europe after the fall of Rome. They survived because Islamic scholars translated them into Arabic, studied them, debated them, and eventually returned them to Europe in Latin translation. Without Islamic scholarship, the European Renaissance might have had nothing to build on. So here we are, 1,000 years later, and I want to ask you something personal. What does this story mean for you? Because history is only useful when it teaches us how to live. So let us talk about that for a moment. The first lesson from the Islamic Golden Age is this. Curiosity is an act of courage. These scholars, Ibn Sina, Al-Khwarizmi, Ibn al-Haytham, Ibn Rushd, they lived in times of political conflict, religious tension, and constant uncertainty. Their work was sometimes banned, sometimes burned, sometimes they were forced to run, and they kept asking questions anyway. In your life, curiosity might be discouraged. You might be told, don't ask too many questions. Stay in your lane. Don't challenge what is established. But the Golden Age teaches us that the greatest gift a human being can give to the world is a well-asked question. The second lesson, knowledge belongs to everyone. The House of Wisdom was not for one religion, one culture, one language. It was for anyone who loved learning. That is radical. Even today, that is radical. The idea that wisdom has no border, no religion, no race. That idea still challenges us. And the third lesson, And honestly, this one hits differently. Civilization is fragile. It took 500 years to build what Baghdad had. It took 1 week to destroy it. Libraries are not just buildings. Universities are not just classrooms. They are the immune systems of civilization. When they fall, something irreplaceable is lost. Today, we live in a world where some people still burn books, where universities are defunded, where scientists are dismissed and philosophers are mocked. And maybe, just maybe, this story is a warning. Protect knowledge. Support learning. Stay curious. Those are not small things. Those are civilization-level responsibilities. We began this story with a city on fire, with books thrown into a river, with the sound of a civilization breaking. And I want to end it with something quieter, something that I hope stays with you after this episode is over. Go outside tonight. If you can, find a patch of dark sky. Look up. The stars you see have Arabic names. Names given by people who lived 1,000 years ago, who stayed up through the night not because anyone forced them to, but because they could not stop wondering. Because the universe was too beautiful not to study. Because questions were too important not to ask. Aldebaran, the follower. Rigel, the left leg of the giant. Algol, the demon star. Deneb, the tail of the swan. Arabic words, spoken on a rooftop in Baghdad, written in careful ink by candlelight, copied by scholars across 3 continents, eventually carried into every language on earth. That is the golden age. That is the miracle of it. Not that it survived, but that it was generous enough to give itself away, to share, to translate, to teach, to welcome strangers and make them family, as long as they loved learning. The Mongols burned Baghdad, but they could not burn an idea that had already crossed every ocean and been whispered into the ears of every curious mind on earth. And that, I think, is the most human thing I know. We burn, we lose, we grieve, and then, sometimes, we look up at the sky, read an Arabic name written by a long-dead astronomer, and realize we are still standing inside someone else's gift.